Oh,
Oh God.
I don't know. I didn't want
Oh
to start
God.
that. I'm sorry.
I can't tell if you were coming or sneezing.
I know.
Oh God. I don't know. I hate this. Welcome everyone to Hot Mess Moments. My name's Dylan Zahner, also known as 8-Bit Dylan, and Lost is my favorite show, but I've never seen The Nanny.
And I'm Beth Dixon, also known as Augusta Wind11, and The Nanny is my all-time favorite show, but I've never seen Lost. But thankfully today we are talking about The Nanny, but we aren't alone because
we have our special guest, literal expert of The Nanny. Lovina,
Yes.
please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lovina Pavel, also known as Ep11, and I actually haven't, this is true, I actually have never seen Lost, but I have seen The Nanny. So you guys are inspiring me to want to watch Lost. Like, where do you watch that? Is it on streaming platform?
It's on Hulu. We just recently found out it is on Hulu. Okay. And the episodes are in the correct order, unlike The Nanny with HBO Max, which is
it's like The Nanny has literally been out on HBO Max since May 3rd or something like that, and they still haven't fixed the order of the episodes.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We're not being loud enough on social media, people.
These are trying times. Like, this is the most important thing we should get to.
Oh my God, wait a minute. I have a connection to HBO Max now. Maybe I should tell them.
Yeah.
Could you?
Oh my God.
What if they don't know? Like, honestly, what if, because I feel like people aren't going to, did you guys tweet about it at all?
Yes.
We tweeted about it a little bit, but I feel like
I'll put it this way. I haven't tweeted about it as much as I've asked for Polar Seltzer to sponsor me.
Which
is a much more egregious campaign I've tried to do on social media. I should probably switch tactics.
Yeah, I think it might work in your favor, but I might message my contact at HBO Max and be like, "Yo, I'm just saying, like." But my connection is through like Doom Patrol and like the DC shows. So I'm like, hey, can you like put in a good word for like The Nanny and get those episodes fixed, please?
Yes, please.
Like, I'll do it. Like, I'll create a little spreadsheet for you and just pass it on. Easy.
I'll make your life easy.
All they have to do is a Google search.
Literally, because it's correct on Google.
It is.
It doesn't match up at all.
I don't understand it. It's so wild. But we have Lovina here today because we are covering 2 episodes of The Nanny today, episode 11 and episode 12. And I don't know if you know this, but like Lovina is like an actual expert in The Nanny that rivals Beth's own knowledge.
We thought that with double the episodes, we needed double the expertise. That's what we were going for. Double the fanatic, people who watch the show to fall asleep kind of power here.
I feel like a lot of people on a lot of HBO Max shows, like a Friends or something like that, there's really like going to sleep shows power. I feel like that's like my favorite streaming platform. Also, whose line is it anyway? That's another show.
That's such a good one.
They're so good.
I've been watching clips on YouTube. I've been seeing them pop up, and I bet it's because of HBO Max.
Oh, I hope so. Because I was like desperately trying to find the show on any type of streaming platform, and HBO Max like saves the day with The Nanny. They bring Friends back, and Whose Line? That's my night show.
That's the trio. That's the trio right there.
Mm-hmm. Comfort.
Dylan hasn't seen Friends.
No.
I'm good though.
I mean, it's long. It's really long.
It's long. But here's the thing. He's like, I don't think it's my style. I'm like, if you like The Nanny, I think you'd like Friends. Am I wrong in that, Lovina?
I mean, yes and no. I think that because the way that the show is a sitcom, a 90s sitcom, but I feel like the comedy in The Nanny is completely different. It's a little more raunchy. They're different shows, but it's good comfort TV.
I think you also like Will and Grace though, right, Dylan?
I've never seen Will and Grace.
Oh, who am I thinking of? Somebody was saying, "Oh, I love." It was a friend of mine. But somebody was saying to me that like they liked Friends and they liked Will and Grace, but they didn't know if they'd like The Nanny. That's what it was.
I remember this. Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. Will and Grace, man, that's a good one.
Yeah. There's like
full of just complete stereotypes for gay people, but at its time,
I've told
the
this
only
story,
representation.
I've told this story before, and this is how stupid I was as a kid, and not even a kid, like fully in like middle school, high school.
Kid.
Yeah, in middle school. Yeah,
definitely.
But like not like a child. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I remember. I think I saw one episode of Will and Grace, and I fully thought Will and Grace were married, and did not realize the show was about gay people. Went completely over my head until one day I think I had a conversation with my mom about this because she's a fan of Will and Grace. She really likes Will and Grace, and I was like, "Hey, mom, like, is this just a show about like a married couple?" And she's like, and I had not been out at this time. So she was like, "I don't know how to handle this." She's like, "They're gay." But I think, and so then from then on forward, thought it was about a gay man and a lesbian. And not until much later in my life, I was like, "Oh, they're like friends." I'm an idiot. I'm a fucking idiot.
Well,
And
the
so
whole
I need to
point of
watch
that
it
show was supposed to be somebody like that they're everything but married because they live together and they're so intimately a part of their lives to the detriment of both of their love lives. Like that's literally the point. So I can understand why you'd be so confused.
Okay. So maybe I wasn't too stupid.
No.
I haven't even seen it. I used to see it like on the TV guide when I was younger. It would always be on like right after school, I feel like. But I wouldn't I never watched it. I would be watching like Nickelodeon, but that's besides the point.
I think it's actually a legitimately good sitcom. Again, remembering that besides Ellen, there was no other sitcom, unlike Queer as Folk.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Queer
one.
as Folk was like not on, network television.
Yeah.
And so it was very niche, and it was like you had to subscribe and it was cable, like all that kind of stuff. Like this was like network television's first like pre-planned, not coming out halfway through the series like Ellen, like LGBTQ focused show where 2 of the 4 main characters are gay men. And it brought in, yes, very stereotypical things about gay men, but honestly, it spoon-fed straight people, like some representation and kind of open people's eyes and ears to like other people who might be in their world. It's also very white. So like there's lots of problems that in a 2021 lens, like you watch some of those episodes and you're like, yeah, this is problematic. But legitimately one of the funniest sitcoms I think that I've seen. I still think The Nanny's the best one, but just putting it out there.
Yeah.
What other ones have you watched? Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think that a lot of I feel like you could find something problematic in any 90s sitcom. Like, even just the episodes we watched today, there was like a little small thing, not like a huge thing where it's like a plot like it's like a plot, but small things where it's like, no, this wouldn't fly today. I don't even know if it would make the air.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But
oh yeah, that like Mel Gibson joke. I was just like, ooh.
Yeah. Back in the 90s when it was Braveheart, that made sense. That doesn't make sense in 2021.
Totally. Yeah. What other shows, Lovina, do you like to watch?
So besides sitcoms, besides like reality TV, not that much, honestly. I think that like I'm big on the comfort show thing. I love a good, here's one. There's game shows, like the Weakest Link reboot, I think is super good.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I heard it was good though.
No, it's really good. Check it. The first season's over. Check that out. And then I think they're working on the following season. It's going to air soon. The Hustler's good. Just like strategy kind of like stuff. I love a good game show network. I know that like the target audience is like 65 and above.
And Lovina.
Come on. Yeah. Come on. It's so fun. But yeah, nothing too much really. It's just this like The Nanny and Friends.
Have you ever watched the shows that they like reference in these like 90s sitcoms, like the game shows, like, Pyramid and Hollywood Squares and like all that kind of stuff? Did you ever watch those?
Not as a kid, but again, like I've been watching like vintage game shows and the reboots. Like they have a $100,000 Pyramid. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. It's hosted by, God, is it hosted by Michael Strahan now? I think it's hosted by Michael Strahan.
Probably.
I like it. It's good background TV. But like we'll probably get to it, but like the whole Bob Barker and stuff like that, I did watch because it was like on the main channels, of course. My parents were watching it, so
definitely.
Yeah.
Pyramid, one of my favorite Joey Tribbiani things is when he's on the pyramid in Friends. A ghost! And they're like, oh man, it's like things you'd find in your fridge, and he's like, it's white, and he's trying to get him to say mayonnaise or something like that. He's like, a ghost! It's like so stupid. Oh god.
Joey was always meant to be the dumb one, right?
Yeah.
Like the ditzy, like himbo energy kind of one.
Totally. Yeah.
He got more dumb as the series went on.
He didn't start off that dumb.
No.
He was just
off
kind of
like,
aloof or whatever.
There you go. And kind of just like flirty, like the free like spirit kind of thing. It's basically like the male Phoebe. I feel like they really had that like already.
Yeah, like Phoebe's like the flighty kind of character, but like Joey ends up being just like a straight up dumbass. But they're both like sexy and can get people. Like that's like their whole thing essentially. She's kind of hippie-ish, and he's Italian.
He's Italian. That's all right. I get it now. Because I've heard of Joey, but I wasn't really sure like how the character layout is. One of those shows I'll just quickly touch on that I really liked was Parks and Rec. Even though it's not a sitcom, but it's like I would say like reverse Friends, where the characters started off like so one note and quickly became something completely different by the end of the series. Like characters that were like meant to be super dumb and stupid end up like becoming very lighthearted and like you love them. And that's like one show that like if it's not reality shows, it's Parks and Rec. Like that's like my go-to. Like, oh, love this show. I could watch it all the time.
Yeah, I watched the first season of that. I don't really remember it, but I feel like I get turned off by shows that are really like completed and it's like 10 seasons. Like a lot of my friends are like, I'm like, why do you want to watch Friends? It's a really comforting like nighttime show. Like put it on when you're going to bed or whatever. And they're like, well, it has 10 seasons. That's kind of how I feel about The Office and Parks and Rec. I also don't know about the humor, but
I run through The Nanny so quickly. I mean, I've watched it how many times since we started recording this podcast. I watch it like on the side all the time, except for the season that we're currently covering. So it's just one of those shows that I think is really, satisfying. Just like Friends, I put Friends on like when I want to watch something and eat, and then I can turn something off and then go do something. Like that's the kind of thing that I'm going to do. But yeah, there's a lot of those kind of shows out there. I'm interested too. I don't know. This is another show that I really liked at the time. And now looking back, there are a lot of problems with it. And it's a little older or it's a little younger, of a show, but How I Met Your Mother. But now they're doing How I Met Your Father. They're doing a remake of that, but it's a very different cast. It's like Hilary Duff's in it. Like, it's going to be really interesting.
I feel like they need to stop touching things. Like a lot of people just didn't. A lot of people had bad taste in their mouth over the finale of that show. It's like why bring that?
That last season was such trash. Like I know people like complain about like Game of Thrones last season, but let's be 100% honest. How I Met Your Mother had the worst last season of any show I've ever seen. Yeah. It was god awful. The finale was horrible. It was just like, ugh. I'm still angry about it.
It's basically just what we assumed would happen the whole time. But throughout the season, they were just like, oh, it's not. It made you feel like, oh, it's not going to happen. But then it happens. And then Barney gets like no character. His character development like gets cut.
Yep.
Because of what happens. And it's like.
And then on top of that, you have 12 episodes that take place all within the same like hour or whatever. And it's so stupid. Like it was clearly like they just ran out of material and they just were writing. There was no reason for it. It was just so bad. So bad.
100%.
Damn. I've never seen it. We do have a lot to cover though. So let's get into these episodes.
Okay.
We're actually, you take this way back.
Yeah, no worries. So we're excited. We're going to be covering 2 different episodes today. So the first one is season 2, episode 11, When You Pish Upon a Star. And then the second one is season 2, episode 12, Take Back Your Mink.
She had style, she had flair, she was there. That's how she became the nanny.
So let's get into this.
I cannot wait to hear your ratings.
Oh my gosh. Should I rate them both at the same time, or should we do one episode and then do the next episode? What do you think?
I say talk about one and then, or go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I think that I think we can give them each their due time.
Okay, yeah. So the first one, which was When You Pish Upon a Star, in my opinion, was the best episode of season 2 so far. I thought this one was so good from beginning, middle to end. I was laughing throughout. I really liked the character beats throughout the entire episode. And the one time that it does slow down, which is towards the end, it's done in a way where it's still really funny. And it like the story throughout it, I thought was like done in such a brilliant way to where like I didn't even really predict what was going to happen by the end of it. And then I was like, okay, I like this conclusion. I thought it was really good. So I'm going to give it 10 out of 10.
Ooh,
okay.
10 out of 10. I think that's your first 10 out of 10 for season 2.
It is, yeah. Lovina,
Wow.
what do you think?
So that's the thing. The conclusion I thought was really good because I didn't see that coming at all. I thought the whole time it was just going to be like, oh, well, Mr. Sheffield's going to be mad at Fran because she's the reason that this kid is, making her lose money and all that stuff. But turns out it wasn't that at all. So I think that boosts my rating a lot. The kid's character was so annoying. So I dock a few for that. So I'm going to go. But then there's this scene in the restaurant that like really makes it go up. And like another thing I also wanted to say before I get to my rating, this show as a series has so many celebrities in it. Like so many celebrities in it. They had like 3 in like 30 seconds in that one episode. Like I love that. So I love that scene too. And her outfit in that scene. Everything just so I'm gonna go. Do we do halves? I'll do
You can do half.
I'll do 7.5.
Okay.
We'll go that.
Yeah, it's good.
So, and what's kind of interesting too is like we're starting to see like these celebrities who are not just like these people have been on television a lot and they get a lot of applause and we're going, who are they? But like people who have like really remained in that celebrity tier, or at least are names that we still know in 2021. We're starting to get to the point where like those more recognizable names are coming to.
Yeah.
This is about the time we're about a season and a half in. And this is about the time that celebrities started to really take note of the show and what they were trying to do and started asking to be on the show. So that's really exciting. This episode is not one of my favorites from season 2. It was fun to watch it with you, Dylan, and like laugh about it. I have problems because it seems like out of nowhere he just changes his opinion to a point where I don't understand how it's not whiplash for Fran a little bit more. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like it clearly he was on the phone. Like even if they had just been like she leaves and he gets a phone call as she's leaving the room or something like that would be just tighten it up a little bit. But it just seems like it's so fast paced at some points. And then you're right. Like it slows down and they slow it down for the exact reason to make you kind of get into this lull of a sense of, oh, this is what's happening. Good for them. And then just completely turn it on its end is the last thing. In the episode.
He's still a little shithead.
Yeah. So for that, I love it. And there's some really good jokes and such in there. But I agree with Lovina. I know the whole point is that he's supposed to be a little pissant, but he drives me crazy. I hate this kid.
He's a little shithead.
Well, just the way, even like the first scene that we meet him, the way he's looking at her, it just
it's
pisses
so
me
gross.
off.
He's
I get
pitching her
it.
ass.
Like that, like I get that, it's a character, like whatever, he's an actor, but it's like I just hate the way he's looking at her, like ew. Like,
Yeah. It's like a gross, yeah. It's like a gross little kid. I also what I liked about this episode is I felt like all the kids get like a funny little scene in it.
Yeah.
Though I have noticed they really don't like using Gracie in season 2. Like Gracie is just there for a scene and then she's gone, and then we never really see Gracie again. They're really focusing on Brighton and Maggie. And I'm wondering if it's because she's getting older, like, and because we don't see her a lot, so I'm wondering if they're like trying to like do her hair up and like dress her in clothes that make her look younger because she's getting older so fast. And so I'm wondering if that's why, but I really don't know if that's the reason why. But they just really don't like using her anymore.
I don't know
compared to
how you
season
feel
1.
about this, Lovina, but my feeling is that they use her so much in season 1 as like a crutch for how desperate the family needed Fran because of her mental health issues. And then they don't know how to write her out of it because season 1 kind of ends with her being much more at peace. Like she doesn't need her invisible friend anymore. She sees Fran as a kind of like mother figure, and she sees that, you know, Fran's there to remind her of her mother, and like the family kind of like is going to acknowledge that the mother was alive. So they have all these things. I think that they just don't know how to use her and like what her storyline is. Whereas it's much easier to know what is Maggie's storyline. That's much easier. She's a teenager who's looking up to Fran for boys and makeup and clothes and all those different kinds of things. What is Brighton's? He's the annoying middle child who's going through puberty, who kind of looks up to his dad, but is also just like an entitled little asshole at times, but really funny, but also super sensitive. Like they've got all these things. And Gracie was just kind of one note in the first season. I don't know, Lovina, knowing without spoiling, do you think that they do eventually find a track for Gracie in the series?
I mean, yeah, I think that in the first season, obviously we see, you know, there's a lot of therapy jokes. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. But I also feel like, I guess to answer your question, I would say kind of no, because throughout the series, again, without spoiling, this isn't really a spoiler, but I feel like we don't really get much of a development in that. And I feel like the kids are already kind of older as it is. And Gracie was the one younger one who, even like in season 1, who kind of like needed a nanny in a sense. But I feel like we kind of lose, like, why is Fran even here? And I feel like it just feels like she's like this gorgeous woman just like living in this rich dude's house with like a butler and like getting all the amenities and all that stuff. Like, good for her, like, period. But I just feel like they just kind of lost the meaning of the show, which I'm okay with. I don't think it's an issue. And it's funny because I feel like they address it too within like little jokes. Like
they do.
She'll be like, do they really need me here? Like, don't remind Mr. Sheffield that I'm like an unneeded nanny.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some really good lines that come up in future seasons. And I would agree with you. I think that this show, they originally only pitched, Brighton and Gracie as the 2 kids.
Got it.
And then the studio came back and said, we want a third older child who looks up to Fran more as a friend than as a nanny figure. And they loved it, and they created Maggie. So what ends up happening is when you have that older figure, it takes away from what you can possibly do with the younger one. And I wish they would have just cut Gracie's character. Don't get me wrong. I love Gracie, and there's some really good things they do with her in certain episodes. But like on the whole, kind of not really needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why I think I liked this episode so much, is we get a lot more development for these characters in the sense that like we really see Maggie stand up to the kid, like the young the little boy, and then even Fran's like, oh my God, she's like so excited to see like Maggie like do her thing. We see how much older Brighton is getting. He's like talking about like feeling his way at the party or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, ew. First off, gross. Secondly, it's like crazy to think of Brighton like already having these types of conversations. We've had a little bit.
But you think of it, he's 13.
Yeah.
Like 13-year-old kids are friggin' gross. Like they really are, but they also don't know what they're talking about. And that's what they think they do, but they actually don't. And that's why it's like funny, but you're also kind of reminded like, 13-year-olds are just kind of the worst at the same time.
And this episode was so self-referential, which I really liked. I liked the fact that the show that Jack comes from is literally The Nanny. It's just called Royal Flush. And I like the fact that the characters are so obtuse to like who they are in real life that they're all like, oh my God. Like that scene when Fran is looking at the show and just goes, the same way that the girl on the TV does. I'm just like, it's so
You're
funny.
like, oh, look at the way she dresses. I could never, how she could afford that wardrobe on her salary.
I feel like it's just stuff that I feel like they're like poking fun at what critics say about the show in real life, because I've definitely read reviews and just general comments like, why is she dressed in like head to toe Chanel? Because she literally is. Like, I have watched like clothing breakdown videos of her wardrobe designer and stuff. Like, her wardrobe's price tag is freaking high, and boy do we love it. But I mean, is it realistic? Not really. But then again, she says I get everything half off at Loman's, or she'll like buy something and return it. Like, fair enough. Yeah.
And then there's an episode in the future where they come up with another excuse and they never reference it again. Like, I mean, there's just like, they always are coming up with like, oh yeah, this is how else could I dress like this? Like, it's one of those things that the things that aren't believable that they always poke fun at, which I like. So Dylan, tell me a little bit about, so you liked the show, you liked the storyline and that kind of thing, but what aspects, like, which characters do you think like really drive this episode?
I mean, definitely Fran, because she's like the center of the plot. I like the fact that she's trying to be like a good person, and the rich, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. So we know that The Nanny is a lot about it has a lot of class humor in it. So we see the jokes usually come from a place of, look how money hungry the rich people are, but also look how like the poor people get by to survive. And so in this episode, it's really funny to see Fran relate to this young kid because he's going through a lot. She had to go through a lot as a kid. She had to probably become an adult sooner than she wanted to. And that's kind of what this kid is going through. So she relates to him on this factor, as opposed to like someone like Cece and Maxwell, who have had a pretty easy life for the most part because they've never had to worry about money, and they've got very comfortable jobs and they make good salaries. And so it's really funny to see how they react to a situation of this kid who is going through a crisis. At least we think he's going through a crisis. And I really like to see this side of Fran where she's still really funny and she's still kind of the butt of the joke for the most part, but she's coming from it of a place of she really is a good human being, and she does her best to like ground Maxwell back to reality in the sense that like not everything's about money, and she does a really good job in this episode. It ends up biting her in the ass later, but it's a good lesson to learn. And we've learned that The Nanny isn't always about teaching a lesson, but this one I felt like did have a little bit of a lesson in it, at least for Maxwell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of episodes like that where I feel like she's kind of teaching him something about, himself that he may not have known, or, obviously he didn't have, I think like when you say he had a comfortable life, like financially and all that stuff, like 100%. But I don't, at this point, I don't really know how much of his family that we've met in season 2, but I don't like his family. Like his family, every time we meet any member of his family, I just feel like, I'm like, oh, this is why you're like that. Like you're this way or that way, or whether it's your brother, your dad, your mom, whatever, or sister. I can understand why. So this is one of those episodes where she teaches him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I definitely get that vibe from, I think we've only met Twiggy as his sister before. Mm-hmm. And so I liked where she was coming from, but I agree with you where it's like they're there, but they don't get it. Like they're so privileged in the fact that they've had a spoon in their mouth the entire time. So they've never really had to like really suffer.
And there's also, I mean, they put this up to being British and all that kind of stuff, but they're also just like not really emotional. They're not really involved with each other. There's a level of just like holding in emotion that they do. They're very repressed, and you can see a lot of that too. And so, whereas there is nothing repressed about the Fine family. If anything, they're too open and loud with their emotions to a point where it causes conflict. And so that's what's fun to see is this balance between the loud Fines and the quiet, repressed, like Maxwell.
Yeah, and I think that that's why we love the Fines so much. Like I personally will see in the next episode we talk about, my favorite episodes are the ones where we see Sylvia and Grandma Yetta. Like that for me, like that's the foundation of the show for me is the Fine family, whether it's even like her dad and stuff like that. I think that, you know, that's why we love them. And everybody wants to feel like even somebody like Maxwell who didn't grow up being nurtured or whatever you want to call it, everybody wants to feel that it's human nature. So I think us as viewers connect with the Fine family and want to see better for Maxwell.
I think it's also, if we didn't have that one family member that reminds us of Sylvia, we know someone in our community who was like a little occasionally like overstays a welcome or a little rude in some aspect, but like also just so funny, so over the top, doesn't care what other people think, like but also has like a heart of gold. Like we all have somebody in our life that we could point to. It could have been a wacky teacher. It like for me, I look at my Aunt Alice my entire life and I was like, Sylvia Fine. Oh my God. And then I'm like supposed to be like a spitting image of my aunt when she was my age. So I'm like, I guess I'm Sylvia Fine when I grow up. And guess what? I am fine with that. Get it?
Yeah. I relate so much, Lovina, like to what you just said. Yetta and Sylvia are some of my favorite characters in the show. Probably followed up by Cece. I think Cece plays a really good antagonist really well. I've said in past episodes of this podcast that I really hope that they take Cece in a direction where she like kind of bites back a little bit and maybe becomes more human, because I feel like she's so played up to be this like dumb, single, desperate, like pitiful kind of person that it almost comes across as not real. And Beth has told me that like it does get better over time. So I'm very excited to see like what they do with Cece and like the dynamics that they throw at her. But every time Yetta is on screen, I have to laugh. Like it's like an involuntary reaction because she's such a good character. And I think every time that Yetta is on screen, we're seeing like a different layer of Yetta where it's like she's always wisecracking, or she's like the person that's like trying to make money, or she's like the person that's like instilling values, even though she's probably not the person you want to get your values from.
Right.
So, like anytime she's on screen, it's a joy.
No,
she's great.
For real. Like I feel like I also wanted to touch on, let me go back to Cece really quick before I forget. I feel like Cece, that's another character people connect to because like, I guess we'll take it back to Friends for a second. I feel like a character like Chandler, I'm not saying Chandler was an antagonist, but he had so much depth as a character. He had so many struggles in his childhood. He had a really traumatic childhood, you know, and he talks about it quite often. And his character development as the seasons go on is, in my opinion, the best of all 6 of the characters. And I feel like while Cece's isn't as obvious as his is, as we'll see in the future seasons, I feel like people want to root for her. She's a really good antagonist in that way, where people are like, okay, well, we know that this is a front, and the conversations that she has with Niles, in my opinion, by the way, Niles also puts on a front too. So we'll get to that later. But yeah. And then Yetta, like there's nothing more that I can say. Like I'm so happy because I feel like she wasn't as prominent in the first season, but as as a series goes on, they develop her too, and it just Dylan, like it just gets better from here. It gets way better.
Wait.
I told Dylan that last week's episode, The Wine Cellar, is the turn
iconic.
of the series where all of a sudden they really found their groove. They figured out how they want to write most of the characters. And we even start to see something, and this is what I want to ask, especially Dylan, did you see really anything different about Maxwell in this episode?
I mean, I did notice that in this episode, he comes across less fatherly, but I didn't really see anything too different besides like his hair. He seemed to be growing out his hair a bit more.
So the thing that I noticed the most about this, having watched season 1 and now half of season 2, essentially, is that this is really the first time we start to see him really yell at Fran, and it won't be the last time. They start getting this really like funny, like he's gonna chase her when she does something wrong. He's gonna climb over his desk. He's gonna say, "Miss Fine!" Like, I mean, there's gonna be these things. And that is like, they tried it in this episode and it worked apparently, because that is the kind of character that they really start to develop for him too. So his character changes. Cece does a lot of physical acting in this episode where
she gets back at Niles.
She's like, she's doing all these different things that are so funny.
So good.
But like I said, last week with the Wine Cellar episode, everybody, not just Fran, started to become a physical character. And they really start, developing that more. Do you think that's fair to say, Lovina, that we're like what you see with like Maxwell today, that works?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like Maxwell's like, why am I forgetting what I'm saying? My brain is like so slow today.
No worries.
But I feel like he maybe wasn't meant to be like an overbearing, I mean, he's a little bit of an overbearing father, but I would argue more overprotective than that.
Yeah.
But as far as like with his employees go, I don't know if he was meant to be that way, but in my opinion, I think he's just, obviously it's second season. Didn't know who Fran was because he hired her on the first episode, and he met her in the same time that he hired her. So he didn't really know her. I feel like it's more of like a comfort thing. Like, okay, well, I'm going to yell at you now. Like, I'm not going to, it's like kind of like I hate to make this comparison, but it's kind of like a parent who's going to be like, hey, my kid's being bad. I'm going to yell at the kid. But I'm not going to yell at my friend's kid. I'm going to let them do it. It's like my employee. That's a horrible, like, I don't want employees to like scream at people like it's their property or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say.
I think that makes sense. So being cognizant of time and such, who is your MVP and who is your LVP of this episode, Dylan? And then I want to hear yours, Lovina.
Okay, so I think my MVP for this episode is gonna have to go to Fran, even though she kind of leads to like a unpleasant conclusion. Actually, no. I'm going to go off the rails here. I'm going to give it to Maxwell. So hear me out.
Okay.
So Maxwell understands show business, and he's just like, okay, this kid's in a contract. Like, you're going to be here for 3 years. If you want to stop acting, do it after your contract. Like, you signed on to this. But he does listen to reason eventually, and he's just like, he is a kid. I get it. I feel for him. I'll let him out of his contract, which is a very nice thing for him to do because he knows the burden of, doing something like that. It ends up biting him in the ass.
Significant financial loss for him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I think like he does give up a lot in order for him to do the right thing in this situation, which is something that is like a huge step for him because we've seen him be very self-serving in some of the earlier episodes. So it is nice to see a bit of a change. I think my LVP is going to have to go to Cece though in this episode because she does the same things that Maxwell does, but they are still really greedy, and she still doesn't give a shit at the end of the day, even though I love her to death. She makes a great doorstop though, because when they open that door and it fucking
That sound.
hits her, it's so funny. I like, it happened and my brain didn't register that it had happened until like a minute after. I was like, oh my God, they just hit her with the door.
They smacked her.
I literally watched you and I was like, I can't believe he didn't respond to that. And then you really went.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. So I think that's who I'd give it to.
All right, Lovina, who is your MVP and your LVP?
So I was going to say Fran too for MVP, but Dylan flipped me. And here's another thing with Maxwell. I'm going to choose Maxwell as well. But something that I did notice was towards the end when he left when that kid, Jack Walker, when he left the house and then the news report came on and he said something that this is another reason I'm flipping. He said, wow, that basically like the paparazzi and the media like won't let this kid have a normal life now that he's quit acting. And it's like, why would somebody who lost that sum of money still have that level of empathy? So we're seeing more empathy with Maxwell.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that until you said it. And then I was like, wait a second, that line. Okay.
Yeah,
so I provided some like evidence for it. And then LVP, I'm still gonna say the kid, Jack Walker.
Oh shit! Yeah, you're right.
He pissed me off. Like, stop looking at women like that. Like, you need to look at her like that. Like, don't objectify our Fran. Like,
exactly.
I have to give it to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you swung me on that. I completely forgot. Jack gets LVP for
I know.
sure.
I sat here and I was like, I can't believe he gave it to Cece over Jack, but my God. Okay, go for it.
I forgot Jack was even in the episode and it was about him.
Unnecessary.
Yeah, no, Jack, pig. He's a pig.
He's
so
like
switching.
10, but he's a kid. Or
so you're switching yours to Jack?
I'm switching,
okay.
Yeah, to mine to Jack for sure. And my outfit of the episode was the leather jacket leopard print. I thought that was really pretty.
Yep.
It was really cute. Lavina, I know that you liked the leopard print dress in the restaurant. Was that your outfit of the episode, or is there something else?
I was going to pick the leather one too, but I think it's just like the theme. I mean, granted, it is Fran and like she loves animal print, but like the theme of the episode felt very animal print. Even when she was telling Bob Barker, like, oh, all of my family's neutered. Like, it's just like, what's the theme of like animals and like actually both episodes?
Yeah, I just
it was kind of both episodes.
Good segue.
Well, what a transition. I was just going to say, what a great segue, some transition to talk about episode 12, which is Take Back Your Mink, where Fran inherits a mink coat, but Maggie's having her first kind of like, oh my gosh, environmental and animal rights. And we need to protect the animal. We need to protect the earth and all those different kinds of things. So that adds a little bit of a complication to Fran inheriting this mink coat. Dylan, give me your episode rating, and then I want to hear yours, Lovina.
Okay. I'm going to be honest. I think this is my least favorite episode of season 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sylvia and Yetta do a lot of the heavy lifting in this episode. In terms of the comedy, there was just a lot of jokes that I didn't find very funny. And I thought Maggie was very annoying as a character in this episode. It was so one-dimensional, and I also find it very hard to believe that Fran was like an activist young in age based off of traits that she has shown and stories she has told of her past. It just felt like maybe they're including this because there was a lot of activism happening in the 90s, and so they were like, let's make a relatable section of the story, even though it doesn't really fit the characters all that much. And I thought the conclusion was very weird. Like, it was just like, keep the code anyway. And I was like, it was so easy. I was like, why couldn't we get to this conclusion sooner? I'm probably going to give this a 4 out of 10. Just because I literally at one point was like on my phone. I was just like waiting for the episode to kind of end. It started to pick up a little bit and I started laughing a bit more, but Yetta MVP of the episode. Everything Yetta said, I laughed at.
I mean, always.
Literally always.
I think I would give it in 8. And again, any episode that Sylvia and Yetta are both in, like prominently in, and not just like popping in, I would have to give pretty high because they're the foundation of the show. Like that's just how I feel. And then the reasoning, I would agree that Maggie was annoying. I mean, there are a lot of, listen, she's a teen. How old is she supposed to be? Like 16 at this point or something?
Yeah, she's supposed to be 15.
I mean, yeah, like I'm not going to say that I was the most not annoying at that age, but as an adult, I find her annoying, and I would agree. And it's not like she was giving us anything very specific. It was just like, well, there's holes in the ozone layer, and well, animal rights. But it's like, what are you exactly fighting for? Or are you just kind of like trying to be like trendy, you know? Like I feel like a lot of people in the 90s were trying to be like, well, I'm an act, like, you know how people are, like even these days, like it's like, oh, I'm gonna put that like hashtag in my bio and then say nothing about it ever again kind of thing. I kind of got that energy from her. Unfortunately, it also reminded me of when I was a kid. I had a moment where I was like, oh my God, like the polar bears. And you know, you're a kid and you get upset about it. I distinctly remember I like printed something on printer paper saying, this is a vow for you to not, or for you to recycle or something like that to save the polar bears. And I would walk around my neighborhood and put it in mailboxes. So like, I didn't even get that from Maggie. Like, don't just walk around like huffing and puffing.
I think that once again, what we're seeing is exactly what you're talking about, Lovina, which was this like performative activism of the 90s. But in the same time, this was the first time schools ever taught people about the environment. Like that wasn't a thing in the 80s, 70s, or anything before that. And if it was just in reaction to something. Like
this one, like deforestation and stuff like that. Like,
but the ozone layer was like a huge thing. I remember being 9 and 10 and 11, and every year them talking about how worse and worse and worse it was, and them saying stop using aerosol cans and stop doing this stuff. Like I remember in elementary school being specifically as if I, as like a 7-year-old, was going around going with an aerosol.
They're all like the Freon, all of the Freon in the air.
But which is like they were making up all these excuses. I remember specifically reading about different kinds of pollution as a part of one of my science classes in like 5th grade, and learning about acid rain and learning about all these different kinds of things. And it's like the first time that school isn't teaching you about all the good things or things in a good lens. It's like the first time that they're trying to teach you something kind of serious. But the way they do it is very performative. And so then you mix it up, and I think this is where the writers do a good job, is making her kind of pretentious and entitled in the way that she's doing it, because she's a pretentious and entitled character. So like she's, you know, very like white feminist in that way. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like that's
Maggie's
like
for sure a white feminist.
100%, 100%. And she's somebody who like, is fully like, Maggie is not supposed to be a character that is like super easy for people to relate to. She's like only like teenage girls at that time could be like, oh yeah, I went through something this, but her character is supposed to be annoying and entitled. Like her character is written to be like that, because how else would she be written? She's a rich heiress who does, you know what I mean? So it's like the whole point of her character is to kind of like learn about the world, and then also try to learn about it through the eyes and lens of like Fran's teachings too. But I completely agree with you guys. I actually really dislike this episode. It's one of the reasons why I wanted this episode to be doubled up with another episode, so that we could kind of get it over, so we didn't have to spend a whole podcast just about it. So
I think it was also interesting. I really liked Marcia as a character in this. And we have not really seen a lot of Marcia, like cousin Marcia. I thought she was a good balance to Fran, in the sense that, because I think we did see her one time, right?
We saw her in the first episode when they all have the mistaken identities. And
that's right.
Where they're trying to say that she's married to Mr. Sheffield, but Mr. Sheffield's Niles and all that kind of stuff.
I liked Marcia in this episode because the way that she was portrayed in this felt very different to how we had seen Marcia before. But this Marcia, I was like, ooh, I could really use more of you in the show to balance out Fran, because I love seeing this rivalry between Marcia and Fran for their family's adorations, even though clearly Fran is the much more favored member of this family.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was just like, when I saw her on screen, I was like, oh yeah, I remember her from like season 1. And then like the more she was on screen and the more she was saying, like when she's eating all that fucking meat, like, how do you eat when you like something? Like,
Yeah.
little things like that.
Fatty daddy. You wouldn't like it.
Well,
It's
what
just-
I love
it's weird.
about that is that it's not super obvious that it's like a rivalry, because we get it.
Yeah.
We've seen the storylines. We get it. It's a sibling rivalry, a family, like cousins, like, you know, in a competition. It's just not as obvious. It's just those one-liners, like, you know, oh, how do you like eat when you like something, like that kind of stuff. It's very, it's very kind of relatable, because I feel like every, you know, maybe like girls growing up together could relate to that. You know, it's an unspoken thing. So I love that. And for me, another thing I wanted to say before we move on from the family is every time, and I think another reason why I love the Fine family is because I know they're Jewish and stuff. So I'm not Jewish, but I'm Middle Eastern. My parents are from Iran, and they just remind me of my family so freaking much. Like the whole, oh, well, I drove her to the hair salon and I get this treatment. It's like stuff like that. It just reminds me of like my cousin taking my grandma to literally get her hair done, or like go to the grocery store, or like whatever, translate for her. So I freaking love them.
What I also love is that it's not just about Marcia and Fran's rivalry. It's like Sylvia and her brother Jack's rivalry that has like clearly been passed down. So like the sibling rivalry turned into a cousin rivalry, which turns in, I'm sure, into a different kind of rivalry, you know? And one of my favorite lines from this, Sylvia in this episode is just so funny to me. But I love when Jack goes, well, their side didn't do as well as ours, Syl. And she goes, what? Well, my daughter's a maid. The nanny, Ma.
It's so good.
It's so good. But like, it's Sylvia and Yetta, to the points that you both have made, I feel like do the heavy lifting of the comedy, and it's clear.
Oh
yeah, I also want to call out here, my outfit of the episode is Fran in her all black dress and jacket.
Mm-hmm.
So slimming, so cute. But I also really liked her black, yellow, and pink bodycon dress because her boobs in that dress look massive. And I've said this before, where it's like I feel like Fran sometimes wears outfits that don't flatter her chest in a way. Like she'll always like, she covers up a little bit, but she'll show like she'll show a little bit of chest, but she doesn't really like do stuff that's too revealing, at least in the first 2 seasons. And I don't know why, but this dress, I was like, girl, show the girls off. Yes, girl. I thought that was very cute.
Lovina, did you have sorry, go ahead.
No, exact same ones. I literally wrote down, I wrote down my black outfit. Like I wrote that down.
With the heart. I love that.
What I don't understand, something I want to say about her clothing is like, even in this episode, Maxwell was like, oh, I would say that you look trashy when you walked out of the door. What I don't understand is like the idea of what is trashy, like in the night, like what is it, like 30 years ago? Like what is trashy? She's literally always covered from head to toe. Like her signature uniform is, it's a short skirt, but she's wearing like opaque black tights. Like what is so trashy about, and her heels aren't like a stiletto, like stripper heels, like those like super like platform, you know what I mean? And she's like you said, Dylan, like she doesn't ever like show off the girls that often. So like, what is trashy? I want to know.
Honestly, I truly think it's because animal print, for example, was considered trashy. And a lot of like sequin and all that kind of stuff was considered kind of trashy. And I think it's really all of those things that are considered trashy come from the wealthy class saying, oh, that's trashy. And a lot of it had to do with new money. So people who were making money, this kind of came out more in like the 80s. So you had like the preps of the 80s, but then you had like new money people coming in who were making a lot of money and were wearing quote unquote tackier clothing and looking trashy, but they were like infiltrating what were normally predominantly wealthy old money spots. And so you see this, it's the difference. If anybody has ever lived in the New York City area, it's the difference between Fairfield County, Connecticut, and like Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. Like New Jersey is very new money. Lots of mansions that look like they should be in California with like over the top stuff, and old money mansions of Connecticut looking like prim, proper Victorian houses with like everything is landscaped perfectly, but not over the top. Like it's that kind of very different feel. So I think that when you hear, oh, she looks trashy, a lot of the times that's coming from Cece, who's very old money.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's very true.
Would you say that it's kind of similar to like the fast fashion versus like designer thing of modern?
Absolutely. Because how often, I mean, you can even see some of that fast fashion versus designer aspect in the Nanny. Like there'll be times in upcoming episodes and seasons and such where Cece's kind of showing off what she's wearing, but it's like, just like a wealthy woman, like Chanel suit or something like that. And they're like, oh, wow. And then Fran will come in with like a mini skirt or something like that. And it's also fashionable and such, but it's just a very different style.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I want to talk about in this is I really like that they're starting to use Brighton as a way to kind of add a different aspect of comedy into every single scene. So in these 2 episodes combined, whenever we do see Brighton on screen, they're sometimes making fun of the fact that he's going through puberty and he's getting older, and that's like kind of the comedy they want to pull from. They also use him in a way of like speaking for the audience sometimes, or they refer to modern day things that are happening in the 90s, and that's kind of what Brighton's there for. And I think it's done really well, at least in the last episode. I can't truly remember too much in this episode because I'm going to be honest.
You started looking at your phone halfway through. So
I was just like, all right, let's get this episode over with. But I think it's done really well. And what I want for them to do with Maggie, because again, Maggie was very annoying in this episode, is I really hope that they take Maggie in a direction that isn't just so boy crazy. I get it. That's kind of her thing. She's going through puberty. She's, boys, oh my God, they're so hot. Like that's kind of how she is. But I want them to do what they're doing for Brighton, where like Brighton's comedy isn't just in the fact that he's a kid. It's like he also says sometimes adult humor. I want Maggie to be in the same vein. We kind of get that when she starts getting snappy with people and she starts becoming more like Fran. And that was my prediction in season 1, because Maggie in season 1 was very meek and very shy. And I was like, I bet you that with Fran being here, she's going to be more open, be more out, but almost too much. And it's going to become like, we have to reel Maggie back in because she doesn't understand that like you can't be at 100 all the time. And we kind of got that a little bit in season 2, but now they're kind of making her annoying. And I'm like, let's bring back over the top, like trying to be too much like Fran and Maggie again, because that's what I want.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely an interesting character development to go through for sure. So all of that said, you already said your MVP was did you say Yetta?
Oh, anytime Yetta's on screen, MVP.
Okay.
Like Yetta for sure. Like Yetta is amazing. The fact that scene when they're in the kitchen and they're yelling and then Yetta's just there, like on the counter.
With Marcia and everything. We couldn't hear.
Yeah.
That was good.
Comedy gold.
And just like a quick aside, at the very end, they do this whole thing where they're being self-referential, where they're watching Days of Our Lives, and they go, "It hasn't been the same since Shane left," and Charles Shaughnessy was Shane. And then they talk about Millie from what's the show? The Dick Van Dyke Show.
Dick, yeah.
And that was the woman who plays Yetta. She played Millie. So
I love stuff like that.
Yeah. So
He's such an icon.
all right, MVP, LVPs.
So MVP, definitely Yetta. I think I would give LVP to Fran this episode because I think that Fran could have handled the situation a lot better. I was thinking about giving it to Sylvia, but I think Sylvia's so stuck in her ways that it's very hard to like get her to think outside of that box. And I think that she's trying too hard to coddle Maggie here. Like at the end of the day, who gives a shit what Maggie thinks? Like it's
Miss Sheffield
just-
doesn't,
yeah, like
because he's
Maggie-
a parent.
Yeah, but like Fran is of this mindset that I think she needs to like cater to everything that Maggie is going through. And she kind of says it herself that she was this way as a kid, but like she's a much different person now. So it feels weird to me that she's not learning her own lessons of when she was young and what she is now to like applying them to Maggie. And instead she's just like pretending that she still cares about these things. She might still actually care. That's kind of where I was kind of unsure about in this episode is she actually super for animal rights or is she just like telling herself this? That's another fault that I have with this episode where I'm like, I'm not sure if she's like putting on an act or not. But I think at the end of the episode where we have that ending where she decides to keep the mink coat, I'm like, girl, that's what you wanted from the start. You should just want to keep the mink coat and just tell people you want the mink coat. And like you would have avoided all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, just introduce Cece earlier. She would just bought the coat, would have been fine.
Yeah.
Then the episode wouldn't have needed to happen.
Exactly. And Dylan
Yeah.
could have just been on his phone for the whole time anyway.
Yeah,
Shut
an
up.
extra half an hour.
Yeah. Lavina, how about you?
I'm gonna rank my people based off of annoyance, and so I'm
I love
taking
it.
mine in a different direction.
Okay.
So my MVP, I was gonna choose Yetta, but let's give Sylvia some love, like her comedy, like we said,
Yeah.
amazing. And then LVP, it's Maggie. Like she annoyed me, honestly. It reminded me too much of like, you know, people on Twitter who are like, oh, well, this pussy grabs back and like that kind of stuff. And then they'll never say anything else about like women of color. Anyways,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's my, you know what I
I
mean.
love it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Exactly. I relate. I feel that my pussy grabs back too. But like you don't want
Great.
that to grab back. No. So oh wait, Beth, what's the next episode so we can try to theorize?
You know, I forgot to bring it up. Hold on.
That's fine.
Da, da,
So we
da,
do this
da.
thing, Lavina, at the very end of the episode where Beth will say the name of the next episode, and I have to come up with what I think's going to happen and see how close I am to it. There's only one time where I've been almost 100% accurate.
Okay.
So the next episode is called The Strike.
The Strike?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Okay, hear me out. So what happens in this episode is there is a strike that happens for something in Broadway, whether that is Broadway actors, whether that is like Broadway productions, like the staff that are in Broadway. There's some sort of union strike that's happening because there was also a lot of like unionization that was happening in the 90s. So it's probably like on topic. That's why they wanted to make an episode like this. And so that means, I'm going to take this in a weird direction. That means that Maxwell has a lot more free time. And we've never seen Maxwell with an overabundance of free time. And so because he has nothing to do, he starts getting weird in the house. Like he doesn't know whether to start reading books or he's never done a hobby before. And so he relies on his kids and Fran and Niles to kind of like teach him how to like not be busy. And it's kind of, that's like the comedy of the episode is trying to teach Maxwell how to be like a normal fucking human being because he's in work all the time. And at the end of the episode, work ends up coming back. And the lesson is, you know, maybe take some time for yourself because he enjoys himself by the end of the episode that he has some free time.
I actually would love for that to be an episode.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It's just not this episode.
You're
Damn it.
like, you're a writer. I like that.
I know, really. I mean, okay, so Fran Drescher, if you're out there, if you decide to reboot,
hire me. I'll write your episodes.
Also, hire Lovina to like play like, you know, the new nanny or something.
Oh God, no! I ruined the show.
Your Halloween costume.
Oh yeah, I tried. It was last second. I was like, this kind of looks like something she would wear.
No, it was
so.
really good.
It was good. It was very good.
So,
Well,
Lovina, where can people find you if you would like to be found? And what are you up to?
These days, like not that much. I'm working full time. I work in television, so in sports TV. I'm an editor, producer for a local sports channel. So that's taking up pretty much most of my time. When Big Brother comes back, you can find me on RHAP. Celebrities coming back, so I'm hoping that we can do like a little preview podcast. We'll see what happens. To see like maybe like a guess on who's gonna. Hopefully, Fran is on it. I've actually heard. I have heard that Fran has been asked to do Dancing with the Stars multiple times, so she doesn't want to. Have you guys heard about that?
I actually have. There's like there was like a list that was going around of celebrities that constantly keep getting asked to be on the show that keep rejecting it. I remember Fran being on it, and there's like a rapper that like turned. I can't remember who it was, but there's like a list of celebrities that people have like kind of deciphered that like choose to never go on the show for some reason.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And just don't do it.
Well, she was just elected SAG-AFTRA president. So I would be interested to see if she did a reality show after just becoming the union president. But I would love to see her in the Big Brother house.
I just think it's so good. Like anybody from the show. Like I don't care who.
Charles Shaughnessy.
We'll see. That'd be great. Did you know that Fran Drescher and Charles Shaughnessy had their families go against each other in Family Feud like last month?
Yes, and I still haven't seen it. I need to.
I watched like whatever there was a clip of on YouTube of like a preview for it. It was so good. I was like,
oh my God. I need to see if it's on Hulu or not. For sure.
It was so good.
But yeah, so we got way off topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I talk about Big Brother on RHAP. And yeah, just hanging out. You can follow me on Twitter. My ad's perfect, right there. And yeah, I tweet about just stuff like whatever's in the news, just stuff. Reality TV. I tweet about Survivor here and there, and a lot about sports and hockey. So yeah.
Very
That's awesome.
Exciting.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Hot Mess Moments. We will be back next week with some coverage of the next episode of The Nanny, which is episode 13.
The Strike.
The Strike, that's right. And if you want to check out our Lost coverage, you can also go check us out on Thursdays, where we'll be covering the next episode of The Lost. No, just Lost. But thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Bye.
Bye.